was online. Good morning. And I started talking for 3 minutes, and I still got only like 7 minutes for the introduction. So I'm going to skip where I kind of was interrupted, because I wanted to just emphasize how important this topic is, how big problem it is, because we know that Czech households are throwing away 20 to 40% is organic waste, and that's a huge amount. And today we are here to solve this problem, to see what kind of obstacles are there, what kind of challenges are there, and hopefully to come also with some solutions and with some integrations. So I know you're super excited to be here, super excited to know what it's going to be, so how it's going to look like. So let me tell you how the morning is going to look like. It's going to be divided in 2 parts. The first one will start shortly, and it started with 2 presentations. The first one is going to be our Jana Vítkova from Institute of Circular Economy. She is the project owner, and she is also the analysis for the Circular Food Future program. She's going to tell us about all the challenges and also about the solutions we found out. After that, Kim Mnjoestro from CIVAC, was it right? He's gonna say the right name. Thank you, Kim. Will continue, and he will come with the inspiration how they deal with organic waste in their region in Norway, right? So it's gonna be, you know, the light at the end of the tunnel for us, for sure. We're gonna end up this session with the Q&As. So you got Slido. So you can ask questions during all the presentations. At the end, we're going to have 10 minutes. We're going to answer all the questions. Please ask, because it's important. If you don't understand anything, just write it down, and we're gonna solve it at the end of the session. The session will end at 10:30. We're going to have 15 minutes break, and then there's going to be another session. It's going to be only offline, so sorry guys, and online, but it's going to be a panel discussion with the beautiful panelists from non-profit organizations, startup, and corporations. And it's going to be led by our think tank boss, Ben Huck, so it's going to be really cool. We're supposed to end around 12, around noon, but please don't leave right after, don't rush, because there's going to be a networking session, and I would say it's really important. We know how important it is to have the personal connection, so stay here with us. Okay, I think it's time now to give a time and place for Jana Vítkova. Jani, welcome on the stage.
Hello, everyone. Well, my name is Jana Vítkova, as was already mentioned. I am the analyst and project manager of the Institute of Circular Economy. And this project is sort of my first baby, I have to say. It is the first project that I was coordinating together with my colleagues, and food is also a passion of mine that I'm really happy to share with you all today. As you all probably have heard of, the European Green Deal aims to achieve climate neutrality by 2050 with a set of policy initiatives that were proposed by the European Commission. One of the key sectors, as you can imagine, is food and agriculture. And how do they want to perhaps propose some of these initiatives into practice is through the farm-to-fork strategy. That's why they really want to achieve a sustainable food system. And I can imagine that maybe a sustainable food system, well, what does it really mean? What do you really imagine when you think of sustainable food system? And how the European Commission defines European food system is, well, number one, it has neutral or positive effects on the environment. Number two, it provides food for everyone that is healthy and nutritious. Number three, it does not cause any more biodiversity loss. It actually reverses the biodiversity loss already caused. And number 4 is, now it slipped my mind, but I wrote it down. It makes sure that it mitigates the climate change and it adapts to its already existing impacts. The truth is that our current global food system is quite complex. And by increasing the availability of food and by ensuring that everyone has enough food on the table, but also what type of food, usually quite processed food and perfect looking food, we have certain negative effects on the environment. So it is really important to question whether this system is actually sustainable in a long term. Although we see that some people are benefiting from the system, but not perhaps everyone. According to WWF, the food system contributes to nearly 70% of biodiversity loss. And now imagine that we produce all this food and we have certain number of biodiversity that is being eliminated because of the food that we produce. And still, we also waste some of the food that is being produced. In the EU, there is 58.4 million tons of food being wasted as of 2021. And now to push it even further, globally, there are also, of course, many people who don't have enough food on the table. And this number, what you see right now from the Food Organization, is only those that are categorized as severely hungry. So this doesn't even come into account of those that perhaps struggle at times, so don't make it quite to the category of severely hungry. I'll move to the next slide. And just because there was quite a lot of words and text, I thought it's maybe good to also move it more to the visual presentation. Intensive agriculture and excessive use of pesticides is one of those problems that we have today that we will surely also talk about further on. Market concentration and having 10 biggest corporations holding many other companies under their arms, it does also have a certain impact. Imagine if all of these suddenly cancelled promotional 1+1 activities in supermarkets, what an impact that would have had. So it's important to also perhaps talk directly to those corporations and see what type of activities can we change and how can we create this impact that would have a lasting impact. Food waste and food loss. Here I mainly wanted to say that there is a difference between what is a food waste and what is a food loss, and I'm just going to take a quick second to explain. Food loss is all that you have in a harvest, post-harvest and processing stages of food system, and food waste is all that comes into the consumer and retail phases. But all in all, it is just a different way of wasting or losing food. And then the list goes on: inefficient resource management, uneven availability of food, where in many developing countries you have food that is, let's say that the more affordable food is usually the processed type of food. So then you also come into place with health and nutritional values. Well, what type of food do we want to give to people? And then we have social inequalities in terms of migrant workers working on farms and perhaps not having enough pay, soil degradation that takes years to be regenerated, where for years you can't use it. You can't plant anything there. No food can be produced on this land. So we're slowly losing in the touch of the indigenous way of farming, and with that, food security and food sufficiency is also in question. Oh, no. Slide before, no. Let's see. Yes, this is the slide. Here I wanted to show you for the Czech Republic where food waste, in which stage you can find food waste. So it goes, what you see there, from primary production, processing and manufacturing, retail and distribution, households, food services, and then the total. And I highlighted the households part because that is where we waste most food. And it is in kilotons, so it is not 790 grams or kilograms, it is in kilotons. Because Norway is not in the European Union, we couldn't find the exactly same distribution of numbers. But we looked into CINCIEN, which is a globally known research institution, and they did also a study trying to find out how much food is getting wasted in Norway. And as of 2024, 216 kilotons is wasted. But I just want to make sure it is not the same type of methods that have been applied, but it is interesting to compare. And because that is a bit maybe broad number, the way that it was also described in CINCIEN was that 1/5 of all residual waste in Norway is food waste. So food systems don't only have environmental implications, but there's also health implications that I briefly mentioned before, that we can mostly, but not only, see in the obesity rates that are rising. Here you see two comparative numbers. So in the Czech Republic, you see that in 2022, the number reached 26% of all adults. And in Norway, the obesity rate as of 2020 was 16.5%. So it is slower or lower, but in any case, the number is rising, and we should perhaps question why is it and what is the context around it. We believe that circular economy offers some of those solutions, making sure that not more food is getting wasted, but we actually have a way to solving some of that food waste by preventing it to even ever entering a food waste market. Both Norway and Czech Republic strive to transform their food system to create a more closed-loop, sustainable system in which we can all eat sufficiently healthy food, but also make sure that our nature and the land that we produce the food on is not getting destroyed. I'll just do it like this. Okay, well, that was a bit of an introduction. Now I will introduce the project that we were working on. It's called Circular Food Futures, and I will shorten it for CFF. So if you see CFF anywhere, that is the project. The main target was to raise awareness and actually find out what are the opportunities and the challenges in Norway and in the Czech Republic in food. So we consciously didn't choose to focus on one stage of the food system, but we wanted to see how does the food system look all around, and is there anything that we can perhaps learn from in the Czech Republic and vice versa in Norway. What we were doing specifically, I'll mention in a moment, but I just want to say that we did this project in partnership with CIVAC, which is why Kim is here kindly today, and it was funded by the Norway grants. The project milestones. It was a short project, I want to say right from the beginning. We started in the end of August, and we are finishing on the 31st of October. And we managed to do quite something, if I can say so myself. On the 11th of September, we held a workshop with Czech stakeholders where we wanted to dive deeper into what do you find to be the challenges and opportunities, and how can we perhaps take this knowledge into the details, the next levels of our project. With that in our minds, we went to Oslo, where we held a trip to find more about the initiatives in Oslo. So there I will also tell you exactly what we went to see and what we learned from there. The final event is where we are currently at the moment, and a research brief will be published by the 31st of October, and we will make sure to share it with those attending the final event today. So you will have access to that as well. Thank you. Now, let's look at the workshop. What did we do there? Did we find anything breathtaking? Yes, we did. The participants were representatives from the government, from NGOs, from companies, and the focus was mainly on the challenges and the opportunities in the food sector. And again, from production all the way to retail. So we try to create a whole round picture. As for the challenges, we noticed in a room that there was quite a lot of voice on a lack of government support, inadequate subsidies and motivation for farmers, especially for sustainable practices, a fragmented sector where many stakeholders who attended the workshop kind of questioned, well, why don't we meet more often? It would be quite interesting to meet with one another and discuss what we are talking about here. So that was quite interesting to see that many stakeholders in the food system don't meet as much, but it could have a beneficial impact. Lack of long-term sustainable strategy that is unified across ministries. A low awareness of soil conservation, local food consumption and healthy nutrition. Lack of standards for circular production and packaging. Unsustainable customer standards, such as having perfect food all year round, and excessive livestock production. But of course, there are also opportunities. We did not only stay with the challenges. Integrating circular economic concepts in school and public campaigns to spread awareness about what is it to be circular and how can we create this circularity as a concept in a practical sense. Government support for sustainable practices in farming, in agriculture, but also further in the supply chain, in the retail, in consumption. Collaboration between sectoral and cross-sectoral stakeholders, relaxing those aesthetic standards. Maybe one day you will not have only an orange carrot in a supermarket, but also a purple carrot that sort of has two ways instead of just being completely straight. Engaging major purchasers in sustainability efforts, promoting plant-based diets and limited sustainable meat consumption. And I suppose I'm not trying to say that everyone should become vegan right away or ever, but I think what is important to say is that you should limit the meat consumption that you are eating, we are eating, just because the emissions that are being emitted from all those meat productions and dairy is quite severe. And not talking about the land that is perhaps used for feeding all those animals and such. And the last one that we mentioned is the unified organic waste management system. So we left the room thinking that the importance is to have a more integrated and well-connected approach in food system. Now, about the trip to Oslo. Again, some visuals. Great. We first went to Linderud, which I apologize if I say any of the Norwegian names wrong, but I will really try, which is a community-supported association, a farm that really pays attention to the social impact of farming. In this farm specifically, what was interesting is that they worked in a poor part of Oslo with socially vulnerable people. And many of them who were recent migrants or even long-term migrants working in Oslo, but living in this area. They would meet in this farm and they would have activities organized by themselves to sort of support a social inclusion in Oslo, in this part of Oslo. Asia Aker Brygge was one of the sustainability-focused dining destinations that we chose, and one thing I want to mention there is that it was the first menu that would have emissions written down, depending on the food that you would choose. So if you chose a beefsteak, which I'm not even sure if there was a beefsteak, but there were some meat options as well, you could see the difference of emissions right away on a menu card. We went to the Embassy of the Czech Republic, where we introduced our activities even further, and we talked to them about what is the potential for future projects, and what did we learn so far, and what do we want to do next. We went to Losseter, which was actually initiated by city developers who contacted an art collective called Future Farmers. And there we walked around and found out that there's actually also the food production part, but a community space where they can have pizza and cook together. So it was really more of a community, social space, also with food production aspects. We met with a City of Oslo representative where we talked more about the city level of what are the aspirations, where do you want to be by 2030. And we learned from the representative a lot about the connections between farmers, but also schools and kindergartens, and how well connected it seems to be in Oslo. Then we went to Oerijs, which is a hydroponic farm providing local fresh food. Their key mission, which I think was really interesting, was to don't drive the food too far. As long as you can provide it to the building where you have the hydroponic farm, you should be able to do that. And on the photo that you see here of Tadash and Kim, that is one of their gardens on a rooftop. And is, I think, the biggest one in Europe, or some milestone in that regard. Gatemira was an educational center for children, and they worked from children who were nearly 0 years old, so really very small babies, all the way to 18 years old. And there they try to bring food as a topic closer to them by allowing them to cook it, cut it, process it, but also take it from the ground, produce it yourself. So it had all the phases of food that the children were directly seeing with their own eyes and learning that way. And what was interesting, we also have concepts like that in Czech, of course, but what is interesting there, and I think quite unique, is that Gatemira is part of the school curriculum of health and food, which is officially a mandatory school curriculum subject. And Gatemira just fills in that hole really well. So that was really interesting to see. Matcentrale Norge is a food redistribution network. They work with different NGOs and different companies who bring food to them. And then Matcentrale Norge is the redistribution center that gives it to the people in need. We met with a professor from NMBU, which is a university focused on sustainable development and environmental sciences, who was really expert in dairy production and understanding the implications of dairy, which again was an interesting aspect for our project. And lastly, we went to North Vegan, which was a plant-based restaurant serving healthy and sustainable food. And there we wanted to kind of round off our debate and find out what were the nicest parts of it, the interesting learnings that we gathered. And then we went back to the Czech Republic. The research brief that I mentioned, very briefly, it will be out on 31st of October, as I said. It will be in Czech language, but also in English language. So also those that are online currently can perhaps read the research brief after, and we will make sure to send it to you. And my last slide here, some of the key takeaways that I would like to share with you. Prevention really is the key, not only preventing more food waste and a food waste level, but really preventing it all the way in the start of the food value chain. And what we wanted to say here is that seeing that food and health is a part of the mandatory school curriculum could also be interesting for Czech contexts, where suddenly a lot of younger generations can really take it in and learn a lot about food and the value of food, that it's not necessary that there's a healthy, nutritious food on a table, and how do you produce it and such. That could be an interesting initiative also for the Czech Republic. That is to say, we also, of course, have circular schools in the Czech Republic and other projects that are very interesting and are touching this subject. But the mandatory curriculum school system is one that I'm touching on here. Number two, collaboration among various stakeholders, including governments, companies, NGOs, but also from different phases of the food system. In Norway, what was really interesting for us was that food council seems to be really well integrated in a Norwegian society. Municipalities seems to work with those food councils where farmers feel also heard by those municipalities, and there seems to be a more connected network from what we have gathered. In the Czech Republic, there are, of course, also many groups and initiatives. But what is perhaps the issue is that food councils are not, or those initiatives and groups are not fully connected to other groups like the government or municipalities or other farmers that are further away. So that could be interesting to dive deeper into. Number three is a unified, long-term and clear sustainable strategy across ministries. Of course, the Ministry of the Environment in the Czech Republic has a certain strategy, so does the Ministry of Agriculture, but seeing that those strategies are not as well connected as we would hope for them to be is something that we could look further into as well. And lastly, we have learned a lot from our collaboration, and we only can imagine how much value there is in strengthening cross-border collaborations further on. So we just want to leave it with you as the last point from my side, that it is really interesting if you ever happen to be abroad to explore a bit further and learn from those initiatives that are local to the environment. If you have heard anything in this presentation and you think, well, that was a really interesting point, please write it down or write it in Slido, and I would be happy to give you more details about it. I only had a limited time, so I'm going to stop it here. Then here you can find our emails and phone numbers, so you can get in touch with us. Thank you very much.
Jenny, thank you. Thank you very much for the presentation. And Kim, I think this is yours now. So let us tell us how you do it in Norway and how we can inspire.
Yeah. First and foremost, I just want to say thank you for being here today and being a part of this project. Thank you for the kind introduction. Yeah, my name is Kim Mjønestre, yeah, which is quite hard. So people in Norway struggle with this as well. So just yeah, call me Kim, and I'm happy with that. I'm working as a project manager in CIVAC, and as you can see here, its full name is Circular Values Cluster. And what we do is we work a lot with different projects that is about circular economy. So it's the reuse and utilization of different resources. I will come back a little bit more deeply into how we do and what we do. But first, I just want to say a little bit about our background and how we were established, because in Trøndelag, in the county I'm from, in the middle part of Norway, we have this really good collaboration between the intermunicipal and municipal waste management companies, which is been going back many years. And now they have something called Se sammen, which we can translate into English as look together, basically. And they've been collaborating a lot on different projects and how to handle the waste streams in the middle part of Norway better, and how to make themselves better. They've been struggling a little bit with getting and engaging the private companies. So that's one when the Trøndelag County authorities came in and tried to challenge them a little bit about maybe you could create a cluster to get the private companies into that cluster as well, and then collaborate maybe even more with companies with financing and with communicators and such. 4 companies from CIVAC actually went with Trøndelag County Authority to create CIVAC. So it's the waste companies that actually are that's created us. But Trøndelag County Authority was also a large help in providing funding. They funded a lot of projects in the start to help us get going, and also counseling in the startup. And also we have something called Innovation Norway, which is a government company that helps helps funding and such for startups, for clusters, and creating innovation projects and such. So they've been quite helpful as well with both funding and with counseling. Yeah, so next slide. Thank you. I just want to talk a little bit about why middle part of Norway. It's a good place, a good fit for the cluster we are. Because in Norway, Trøndelag is the county with the largest biomass both on aquaculture and on agriculture. Norway has a lot of fish farms, and the central hub of all the fish farms almost is middle part of Norway, is Trøndelag. So we have a lot of biomass and good resources both from fish farms and from agriculture and also from forestry, which is really good resources to be used in especially in biogas production and such. So it's a good place. And we also have the highest R&D intensity in Norway. So we have Jana mentioned SINTEF, which is one of the Europe's largest R&D institutions. And we also got universities like NTNU, which is the largest university in Norway. So there's a lot of R&D, and we also got a lot of other institutions and such. So it's a lot of innovation going on. Yeah. And I also would like to just mention our members, because as a cluster we can't do what we do without our members, and it's the members we actually do all this work for. And we have 26 members right now, which is companies and organizations dedicated to collecting, recycling, reusing and disposing resources. And we also got financial and research institutions, competence centers, and communicators. And I just want to mention NIBIO here. That one is the Norwegian Institute for Bioeconomy. And the reason I'm mentioning them is because INCIEN has been collaborating with them earlier as well. Yeah, next one. And this is the strategy of ours. So I'm not going to go into this in detail. So if you want to have a closer look, take a picture or come talk with me afterwards. But what I want to mention is that the biggest goal we are trying to reach is to be a leader in the development of a sustainable society, which is quite a far-fetched goal for us because we are just 2 persons now working in CIVAC. So. But I think it's important to have, big goals to try to reach. But at the core of what we do is the mission is to contribute to best possible utilization of resources both in existing and in new circular value chains. So we're working with a lot of different kind of resources, where the bioeconomy and biological resources are one of them. And we also want to create profitability and business opportunities, especially then for also our members. Yeah. And these are the resources we are working mostly with. So the bioeconomy is the biggest one. And here we have as I talked a little bit about, the interaction between the blue and the green sector. So you have the agriculture and forestry and the green, and you have the aquaculture as the blue. And these produce a lot of biological resources or waste, which we can, especially in middle part of Norway, we use a lot of it into the biogas production. So we produce biogas and the bio residue. Here we actually have the biogas goes into the bus fleet in Trondheim, which is the largest city in the region. So they got a great collaboration there, and it's also sold in the open market. So we have this filling these stations where you can go and fill up your trucks or and such. And we have on the plastic side, we have focus both on the collection, processing, and production of new plastic raw materials, and we also have quality focus and utilization of the waste plastics and new business areas. On the wood, we have also the same here with the utilization of both pure and unclean wood, and also for the reuse and material recycling, and also the both of the fresh and the recycled materials. And lastly, we have textiles, where we're working a lot with different municipalities on pilot projects on collecting, sorting, and downstream solution from households. Yeah. But we are here to talk about the food sector, so I'll come back to that. And we have our projects here are the three first one, but we also take part in a lot of other projects, and I'm mentioning two projects here. So yeah, next one. The first one here was the residual waste analysis in mid-Norway, where I talked about the CIVAC, the Look Together companies, and these are the 10 intermunicipal waste companies. So the CIVAC companies and 2 private waste companies went through all of the trash from all the waste from private households, cottages, and recycling stations. And they dig through it all and went through it and noted what they find, reported it and such. And what they found was that the analysis showed that over 65% of the residual waste could and should have been sorted into other fractions for material recycling. And Jana, you mentioned from the SINTEF study that it was quite a lot of it, 1/5, wasn't it, of it was food waste. So we have a lot of food waste in the residual waste as well, and the residual waste just gets burned. So it's a lot of resources here that we don't utilize in the correct way, which could have gone to biomass, or you have plastics which can be recycled, or you have paper or different kinds. So we have a lot of things to do here to try to utilize those resources a lot better. But the results from this analysis has actually been used in several national and international R&D projects and publications. And the one you see here is another analysis done by the SINTEF, where they used the results to analyze the sorting behavior in central Norway. Yeah. 2 other projects we have been working on is the sustainability reporting for intermunicipal waste management companies. And these companies don't actually have to report on sustainability, but their owners, the municipalities, demands this. And this is mostly because they see that this is there are regulations and laws coming where they have to do this in the future, and it's better to start now. And it's also to help the companies as well to get better at what they do, because they can then start reporting in a way that they can compare with each other. So that's what they are doing now. They're trying to develop a reporting system for that sector, actually, which is quite cool. And we also have the other projects converting garden waste into soil products, where we're collecting garden and park waste from both private households and also from municipal areas, and trying to find ways to convert it back into soil again. And we have been trying to use different types of recipes to see how can we best get the best soil out of it, and also how can we produce this soil at different places in the region, because then we can cut down on transportation and such. Yeah. And we also have 2 studies that we are taking part of, which is the first one here is the extraction of phosphorus, nitrogen, and potassium from processed water. So here we're trying to extract these resources out from the processed water and also from the sludge from the municipal treatment plants, because a lot of countries and a lot of places, both in Europe and in the world, are struggling with phosphorus poor soil. And phosphorus and nitrogen and potassium is quite important in the soil to get both for plants and for vegetables and such to grow. And the problem is that the reserves of phosphorus are about to run out, and the reserves are also located in Morocco, in China, and in Russia, which is countries we might not have the best relationships with. So it's important that we in Europe use that resources as best as we can and take out what we already have in the system and maybe use it again instead of just letting it go into the nature. And this study is led by the biogas plant EcoPro, which is the biogas plant that takes all the food waste in the middle part of Norway and converting it into biogas and bioresidues. And also with Nibio here as well, actually. And the other one is transforming CO2 into fish feed ingredients, which is a project I think is quite sci-fi, because you're basically turning air into proteins. But here they're seeking to produce proteins for fish feed using CO2 capture and microbial fermentation. So bacteria eat the carbon from the CO2, and then they grow, and you can use those bacteria or organisms as proteins in fish feed. And the problem here has been that fish feed in Norway is produced on soybean, which is imported from North and South America, which is bad because of transportation, but also because of the self-sufficiency for Norway. If we can produce our own fish feed, we can produce fish, and then we have no fish if something happens, if there's a crisis or something. So we want to find local substitutes. And this study is led by SINTEF in collaboration with a lot of national and international stakeholders. Yeah, and our relevance to Czechia is we haven't been talking with Czech stakeholders for very long, but back in April we actually had a delegation from Czechia that visited us, and this was representatives from the embassy of the Czech Republic in Oslo. And it's also representatives from Czech government, universities, and research institutes. So this group contacted actually the Trøndelag county authorities, and it was those that contacted us again because they wanted to know more or learn more about municipal waste management and population behavior, and that's what we are working on every day. So they contacted us, and we took them in, and this was part of a larger tour they had in the region. So they went and visited SINTEF and NTNU as well, I think. And right after that, we were contacted by INCIEN to take part in this project, and this we thought this must have something to do with the Czech delegation that was visiting us just before. But that was just a coincidence. I think that was quite funny. But we are really happy to be here, and we're really glad that you contacted us. And I also want to mention that we are working on a possible project cooperation with stakeholders in Poland. We don't know what it's going to be yet. We are talking, and we're going to have a meeting quite soon, I think. We're trying to find ways to cooperate. And just before the Czech delegation in April visited us, we also had two delegations from Bulgaria that came to visit us, where we talked about exactly the same, so about municipal waste management. So in regard of this project, our contributions has been mainly to participate in the internal consultation and also help to share the information about both the final event and what we're going to do and about the project. We've been helping with identifying key Norwegian stakeholders and best practices. And we've also been reflecting on and connecting Czech and Norwegian contexts together with INCIEN. And we participated during the Oslo trip, and we have been sharing information and our sources, and in helping on in giving inputs on the research brief. And we're here today talking, and lastly, I just want to say a little bit about challenges and opportunities on the food sector in Norway, and a lot of what Jana talked about that was the challenges and opportunities in Czechia is also quite relevant for Norway as well. But I mentioned some here as well, and the first one I want to talk a little bit about is that we have way too much edible food that gets thrown out. And as we said now in the residual waste analysis that we did back in 2021, we saw that a lot of it was not just food waste, but it was actually edible food that was thrown out. It was very, very noisy outside. But a big part of the problem here, I think, is both of the labeling. You have overproduction, and you also have people that just buys too much stuff, and it gets maybe starts getting rotten and such in the refrigerator, and just have to throw it out. And in Norway now, we have been working a lot on this problem. You have municipalities that have used their ownership in the intermunicipal waste companies to promote and do campaigns towards the inhabitants to get them to eat up their food and don't buy any more than you need, and try to be a little bit more think about what are you actually throwing away. Is it important for you to throw away all that food? Because there's actually in Norway as well, we have people that are poor, that don't have enough money for their own food, which is why it's so important for the food bank as well, as Jana talked about, that we went to visit in Norway, which is doing a really good job. And also on the labeling part, we actually have now in Norway, we have like the best before the date, but below the best before, they have now written also good after, which actually help people to be conscious about that it can be edibles, even if the best before date has went. And the second one is the profitability for farmers, which Jana talked about here in Czechia as well. And we see that even though we have subsidies from the government and such, but it's still hard to be a farmer, to manage the economy in it. So it's the grocery stores and such may up their prices, but still a lot of that prices goes into all the different chains before it gets to the farmer. So the farmer don't actually earn a lot on it. So they have a lot of problems there, and most of the farmers in Norway have to have a full-time job besides being a farmer. Which makes it hard to, they don't have a lot of free time. And also, we have healthy food that is expensive, and we have ultra-processed food that is cheap, which is a big problem if you're poor, for example. And it's also a problem in creating initiatives for being healthy. And Jana, you talked about obesity in Norway as well, and it's easy to be to get obese if all the food that is cheap is ultra processed and bad for you. And on the opportunity side, you have now specifically after the pandemics, we see that farmers are creating a lot more locally produced food. So instead of selling the meat and vegetables to the grocery stores, they actually try to create something of it themselves. Which creates higher quality food, and you also get farmers can sell it for more, so they earn a lot more themselves. And you also have in Norway we have a really good quality control from the food authorities, so we get really good food out of it. And new technologies and knowledge, and we see it now in Norway. We are trying out automated tractors, for example, with a lot of different sensors, so you can, instead of using putting nutrients in the soil and just spreading it across the entire field, you can pinpoint it a lot more exactly and see that, all right, I need more, say potassium there, and I need more nitrogen there, and then you can use less instead of just using a lot of resources on the entire field, which is quite good. And also on the knowledge side, we have NMBU, which we talked with in Oslo. You have NIBIO and such institutions that are working a lot on creating more knowledge for the farmers. Yeah, and lastly, I just want to show the picture here. That's actually my home place in Norway. That's where I grew up. And as you see, it's quite hard to be a farmer in Norway because the terrain is a little bit problematic. So we tried to create some fields in between all the hills and mountains, but it's quite beautiful, I think. Yeah, and I think that's what I had to say for now. If you want, you can contact me. Can you go back just shortly? Because if you want, you can take a picture of the slide I thought for contact information. And if not, you can find us on civac.no as well. So this is my boss, and this is me, and this is the entirety of CIVAC. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you for the beautiful timing. We got even more minutes for the questions. So, you ready? Are you planning to share the presentations? Okay. Yeah, hi, there's no sound on live stream. Is there an initiative in Czechia that addresses the disconnect between NGOs, policymakers in education, national and regional ones, and corporate stakeholders? Is there an initiative in Czechia that addresses the disconnect between NGOs, the policymakers in education, and corporate stakeholders? I think it's connected with the challenges you addressed after the first workshop, that the stakeholders are really fragmented. So is there any initiative that is focusing on this problem, I would say?
Yeah. Very good question, first off. I am not aware of one that would be connecting all the stakeholders of one initiative. If there's anyone in a crowd that would know, then maybe it's also good to use these resources because there's a lot of knowledgeable people sitting. Yes, I see one hand over there. If you can say it.
Including the minimizing food waste. And within roundtables, we were working with NGOs, we're working with contracting authorities, with other specialists from other ministries, but also with the market. So I guess many challenges are the same of how to link the market with those who actually want to buy within the public sector. But this is only about the public buy, public purchase.
Thank you very much. Yeah. And with that, maybe also the food banks would be an interesting, because we also have food banks, of course, in the Czech Republic. There is one in Prague, but there is one for each sector in the Czech Republic. And those are also connecting companies, NGOs. But I suppose that there is only on a certain phase of a food chain. So if that is good enough of an answer.
I think so. There's another question for Norway. Are there rules, minimum standards set at national level for minimizing food waste in Norway? Do you know?
A little bit unsure about how it's on the national level, on the rules of it, but I know there's at least working a lot on it, and there's a lot of different what should I say, organization and such that are working a lot on it, and it's also from both the municipalities and also from the government as well. It's a lot of focus on it, and so they want to do it as to reduce it as much as possible, and they also implementing a lot of systems for it to try to prevent it at least. Yeah. I think it is, but not at my knowledge per now. But I can check it afterwards and come back to it. Yeah.
A lot of food waste comes from the school canteens because children can choose the amount of food by themselves. Are there any plans how to change it?
Well, I would really like that. In Oslo, what we know is from the representative of the city of Oslo, we know that they are currently focusing on working with schools and exactly with the canteens and with this issue, specifically. They should be done with this project by 2025 and move into kindergartens. Now, exactly how they will do it was not necessarily certain yet because they are just rounding their results. But what the representative of Oslo was sharing with us is also overseeing the food that is being given to the child. So it is true, they can still choose themselves, but now the chefs or the cooks are also there to support and advise and maybe say, well, maybe that's a lot of potatoes. Simple things like that apparently works quite a bit because suddenly the child also realizes that's quite a lot of potatoes. But for the, yeah.
Yeah, and in Norway we have the catering and the restaurant sector has actually made this. I think it's a company or organization of sort that's called Matvett, which is basically being conscious about how you use food resources, where they are focusing on how to prevent food loss and food waste. That's an interest organization maybe for almost for the sector, where they have combined forces almost to work on reducing the food loss, which I think is quite good. And they are working a lot with the sector on how to do it, and they're also working on towards the inhabitants in Norway with different recipes you can make for the dishes and such, and where you can use like leftovers and different things. And they also share a lot of facts and such about how much food waste is going, how much food waste it is, and how much have we prevented and such. So they do a lot of cool things.
I got one thing. I read an article maybe 2 weeks ago. It's quite simple. One canteen, like school canteen in Czech Republic, not sure in which city, opened a canteen as a buffet. So the kids can choose whatever they want to eat and how much they want to eat. So and it's already starting a project or the project was here to see if the waste will decline, of course. So sometimes even the easiest solutions can be also pretty smart and pretty helpful. I might stop a little bit more by this educational system because I was really impressed if you have this food and health systems already in your educational system. I wonder how long do you have it, if you know it? Were you already a participant in that? And how does it look like?
Yeah. Firstly, I don't know how long it's been, but it's been as long as I can remember. I had it in school when I went in. Yeah, so we have a lot of focus on it from quite early on. I think it depends a little bit from from school to school as well, depending on how much resources you have and such. And if you have a school in a city, you have a lot more things happening around you that you can take part of. I came from pretty far out in the district, so but there we had a lot of focus on everything, and my teacher in that class actually was they used to go hunting for deers. So yeah, so one time they actually brought a deer heart into that class to show, yeah, but it's to show that what it is, and to show actually, and at least where I come from, my family is hunters as well, so it's quite common. It's I've been from my early years, I've been with them on the hunting and also on the part afterwards where you cut up the deer and sort out the meat And my mom did all that by herself, so she just took the entire deer on the kitchen table and cut it out, the meat and all of those things. So, yeah, we use as much as we can, and we make different kind of dishes out of it. So it's quite common to use the nature in a large part in Norway, I think, and it's quite yeah. My mother also, she went out in the nature and picked the berries and such, made jam and different kinds of things. So and then I got a lot of friends that goes out and pick mushrooms and certain things. So yeah, exactly. But I think it's we've been using the nature and been thinking about food for a long time, and it's quite used to it. But then you also see people living in the cities that buys their food in a grocery store that don't know even where it comes from. So then I think it's quite important for like in Oslo, where they got geitmyra, and to learn actually where does it come from. So I think that's quite a cool concept, the geitmyra. Yeah, so it's quite common to have it in the school system.
Or the kids think that the cow is purple, right? It's also it's possible. Okay, another question. So what are the top recommendations or key first steps we need to take to make the situation better? Jenny, do you want to start?
The situation better. It's quite a broad question. So I would say maybe let's move away from the broadness of the question and pick sectors that you can yourself make better. I'd say moving towards a more localized food production, a shorter supply chain, ideally more farmer to retail instead of having the middle person in between. That is can help, but also for many farmers, a lot of money get lost there. So I think it's important to, yeah, get away from the broadness, pick the phase that you can influence yourself, and then really try to localize the solutions. Now, I'm saying it, and at the same time, I'm thinking, can this be actually achieved on a global level? Because it is a very intensive agriculture, and it does not do really well on our environment, but it is really efficient. And I think that is the danger that is not, well, so often spoken about, because it works really well to feed everyone or as many people as possible. But that being said, we also notice that it is not sustainable. So it does the job that it needs to do, and is doing it really well, and maybe for another 15 years, 20 years, 50 years even. But there's going to be a tipping point where suddenly the pollinators are not available anymore. And if you don't have pollinators, how will you produce any food? So I think we need to think of tipping points much more and localize our problems a bit more.
Kim, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, firstly, I just want to say that we probably need a larger project on this, because we had this project going now for yeah 3 months. So it's yeah, we don't have the answers on all the questions yet, but. I also want to just say a little bit about the consciousness for inhabitants, and how to use food, and how to not throw away, and be conscious about how can you be part of the solutions as well. Because I think it's quite easy to get in a situation where you buy food and you throw away when it gets bad, without actually thinking of what are you doing, how is this impacting in a larger context. So to create that consciousness around that, I think that's quite important as well.
Okay, what specific circular food innovations can Czechia adopt based on the inspiration from Norway?
Okay, I mentioned a couple already in the presentation, but well, there's many aspects that I found really interesting. So, for example, in Linderud, that is the social farm that I mentioned, we have similar initiatives in Czech, like Kokoza or Sofarm, which is a social farm as well. But what I found interesting is that they really worked with the vulnerable population by providing also programs, language classes. It seemed to be not only about food, but much more, also integrating them socially in a society. And to what extent Kokoza or SoFarm is doing that, I'm sure they do a lot in the social integration as well. But maybe getting in touch with Linderud and Losseter and trying to find an area where this inspiration could be sparked, I think could be really nice. And for the educational part, Gatemira was, of course, one that I mentioned already before. It is the sustainable food education that also Kim went through, not Gatemira, but through the educational system. And that could be really interesting to get more connected with the circular schools in Prague and seeing, well, was it always like that? Was it always part of the curriculum? If not, which probably it wasn't always like that, how did you make sure that it is now ingrained in the curriculum? I think those questions are really essential to be asked between partner A, partner B, and having a conversation together. And again, me, Nina, and other INCIEN partners are really happy to provide you with contact information and connect you with those that might be relevant for you.
There's a really closely question to that. Do you have stakeholder map for sustainable food sector in Czechia? Sustainable map, if there are some initiatives you were talking about, but do we have the map for kind of all of them in Czechia or mostly?
That's a very good question. I personally am not aware of such a map, but it can be created. No, so yeah, I think that would be really nice to see it on a visual site. So whoever asked it, we can talk about it a bit more and also, yeah, find a way to do it perhaps.
Description of all the various players and initiatives. So I think that's something we can offer from this project together and
So there is a map and you're gonna have the document.
In a textual way. So there is a map in a research brief. So once you get the research brief and you go through it and read through it, you will find out more. So yeah, what Ben is saying is correct.
And did you have retailers among the stakeholders of your project? What is their main role in regards of food waste according to you? Because Jan, you were mentioning the 1+1, and this also come from the big companies like Unilever, Nestle, and so on. But the retailers are a big part of it, right?
Definitely. We did not have them at the end in our workshop, but we researched them quite a bit because they are an essential part of the food system. And we can see that most of the retailers, if not all in the Czech Republic, are doing their part to become more sustainable. Tesco, for example, is really strict with their supply chain people. So they ask for more that is needed, more than is needed. In terms of the sustainability indicators. So they really want to know where is this from, who produced it, do you know what the conditions were in the production processes, which I think is quite unique that they are themselves already looking ahead. Well, it is not now mandatory, but maybe in the future, seeing the trends around sustainability, it will be important that we are very sustainable. So they are definitely leading in that regard, but Koshik, an online supermarket, is also doing a lot in the promotional activities. So they, for example, also were looking into the 1+1 advertisements and what impact it has, and that people actually maybe waste more food if they get another +1. Although it looks good that you get a +1, but maybe you don't eat it. But yeah, all in all, maybe a shorter answer, most of the retailers, if not all, are doing their part.
There is one business question. There was a recently bankrupted company in the Czech Republic, a hydroponic farm combined with fish farm, where fish waste was nurturing herbs. Was that a good idea or not? Because you already talk about it and it's probably working in Norway. So is it possible for these kind of innovations projects to be business sustainable?
Yeah. Yeah. Where do I start? I think it's important that we keep trying. I think it's what I'm going to say on that, because yeah, if we to find new solutions, we have to try, and maybe we will fail, maybe we will succeed. But if we don't try, we won't know. It's been a lot of talking now about how we need to utilize a lot more of what the sea and water resources can bring us, and I think fish farming in different ways is a smart solution on that. But it's also important here to remember the welfare of the fish as well, and that the fishes get a good life as well. And it's been a lot of talk now in Norway about that, how the fish farmers are not kind to the fishes, sadly. Yeah, it's a big problem. So there have been a lot of critique now on them because of it. Yeah, so a lot of public scrutiny. So they have to work a lot on that. But I think yeah, it's important to use those resources that we have. So if you can, yeah, so it's important to try, I think.
We are running out of time, Tadej. Yeah.
If you remember the rooftop with the garden, Jana showed us, they had also a small hydroponic farm in that building. But what I want to show is that the situation for the hydroponics is very, very different in Norway than it is in the Czech Republic. Because ultimately it all comes down to the price of electricity. So you need so much electricity for that, and here in the Czech Republic, electricity is quite expensive compared to Norway, where it's really cheap. So to create a hydroponic farm in Norway is quite easy because you don't have to deal with high prices of energy. Maybe this is also, like, I'm not talking about fish in this context, but yeah, maybe it's a motivation for us to maybe invest more in the source of electricity in that
wind and solar. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's very different in Norway and in the Czech Republic because the prices of electricity are so.
Great point. Thank you, Tadej. Yeah, I just thank you. That was Tadej was saying, because he was the part of the Norway travel. So he said that the fish farm in Norway is different in the way that the electricity cost in Norway is much cheaper than here. So, and of course this is a cost for the business, right? So of course then if there is an example of this kind of farm in Czech Republic who went bankruptcy, the prices of electricity can be a huge impact on that. So thank you for this. We are running out of time, but I don't want to let you go, not yet. But let's just say, what are your recommendations for each of us? Where to start, and how can we prevent the organic waste? And just give it in 2 sentences, each of you, please.
I think yes, start with on a young stage. So do it more maybe as Geitmyra, as we talked about, because yeah, do it fun and make it interesting, and the kids will learn and they will take it with them further.
Thank you, Jani.
Well, eat more plant-based, number 1. Number 2, look up initiatives around you, try to shop locally. Maybe don't go to all the biggest supermarkets. Maybe you don't even know about it, but there's a market really near to you where you can buy local produce. Yeah, if it's too fast individual solutions, I would leave you with those.
Thank you. So thank you very much for your presentations and for your discussions. Thank you for your questions. We didn't even finish them all. And thank you for our online viewers for participation as well. And have a great day for online viewers. And you guys, please stay. We're going to continue in 15 minutes with the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you.